It starts with a cell uncontrollably dividing in our body, and the body doesn't reject that because technically it's your own cell. Those type of treatments, you choose it because you don't have any other better option.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another Questiony Q&A. Today we're joined by Zeynep to discuss all things cancer related. And would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, Zeynep?
Yeah, sure. I'm Zeynep. I am a postdoctoral research fellow at University of Oxford. I did my PhD actually in neuroscience with brain diseases, but now I work in cancer research in a cancer research lab. We focus on skin cancer specifically, but generally mechanism of cancer.
Yeah, that's great. So just to be advised that some topics mentioned in today's video may be distressing for viewers, so I just want to issue a trigger warning for any discussions of cancer. We'll start today with our first question, and it says, why is cancer often measured in stages?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, it makes things easier in the medical practices because those stages are actually defining the severity of the disease, the development, and the progress that the disease showed in someone's body. And then later they will be helping actually to plan the treatment. So the stages usually sometimes have letters, T or M or S, coming from stage, T coming from tumor, and M coming from metastasis. So these are all the steps of cancer disease development, actually. It starts with a cell start uncontrollably dividing in our body, and that division of the cell in time makes a solid accumulation of those cells, which we start calling tumor. And then later, some of those cells leave that tumor area and that region, and they go and settle in somewhere else in the body. And we call this metastasis. So all this staging is actually referring where is the disease in someone's body, which will define the treatment later. So usually the numbers comes as from 0 to 4. And obviously, the higher the number gets, it means like the things get a bit out of control and more progressed. But those labeling is just helping doctors to define this, the progress of the disease. So then later they can actually decide what is best to do at that stage for that patient. And that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for your insight for that question there. So here, the next question is, what is meant by unresectable or inoperable cancer?
That could be few things, actually. So some tumors, they locate in regions that it's really hard to operate regardless of the cancer. And that's usually, for example, in the brain, in the stem of the brain, in that part that connecting to spinal cord. Those regions are usually really hard to operate just because the nature of it. And it's so, some areas, let's say it's so small and fragile, any little touch could actually give a paralysis outcome, for example. So if someone sadly developed a tumor in those areas, then, doctors might call that this is unoperable because, I can't operate that in a normal setting, and now you're having a tumor there. It's a bit even complicated. Or sometimes they might say that not operable anymore. It's because it's spread in the body so much, then you can't operate, several parts of a human body and then take tumors out, because that level of operation is actually not foreseeable for someone to survive. Or another type could be for the type of diseases, like type of cancers, for example, blood cell cancers, that they actually just divide themselves in the blood, maybe not actually forming a tumor. So it means like there is no location that you can actually operate and take the tumor out, because operation is usually kind of trying to clean the tumor from the body. Let's say there is a tumor in the breast, so you can operate and take the breast out, and you can actually get rid of those cancer cells, and then you follow that with other type of treatments. But if the type of cancer is not actually generating a tumor, so it means there's nothing you can actually operate. So you only consider chemo and the radiotherapy, for example.
Thank you for that answer. So the next question we have here comes in, and it says, what is involved with chemotherapy treatment?
Good. It's technically really severe and toxic drugs. It's only taken in hospitals. They are not even at a level that can be prescribed that someone can take at home. You can't, unless they became something really small and low dose towards the end of the treatment. They target fast growing and dividing cells in the body, which is the definition of a cancer cell. And they toxicate the DNA of those cells and they kill the cell. I think in medicine, those type of treatments, we call them something like, you choose it because you don't have any other better option. So it's a heavy treatment. Obviously, it targets the fast-growing cancer cells, but in our body, there are cells that they also divide themselves naturally and in a healthy way, like the hair cells, hair follicle cells, or the skin cells, or blood cells, or some cells in our gut. So sadly, for example, those drugs, while they are killing the cancer cell, they also affected healthy cells of our body that has, the feature of growing and dividing themselves. But technically, they are the toxic drugs that we target cancer cells, and we kill cancer cells with those drugs.
So the next question here is, what is the difference between chemotherapy and radiotherapy treatment?
So they both target fast growing and dividing cancer cells, and they try to kill them in the body. So chemotherapy, because they are drugs, there could be two main ways to deliver them to the body. One could be orally, or the other one could be intravenous, so you just inject to the blood. Those drugs travel across the body, so because you're giving them your blood, so then they actually, go everywhere in your body, and they try to find the fast-growing cancer cells, and they target them and they toxicate them. On the other hand, radiotherapy, it's doing the same thing. It's targeting the cancer cells and trying to damage their DNA and kill them. But your radiotherapy is more local. So you don't get entire body under the radiotherapy. And it's usually using the laser beams. The main one is the X-rays. So you are technically trying to give radiation to the cells so they actually die. But because it can be local, so you can target, if you know where the tumor is, you can just target that area. And I think there is a good technology now. They can do quite local targeting in most of the tumor. Sometimes they need to actually deliver the radiotherapy along with an operation, a little operation to access to the tumor, and then they give the radiation, which usually takes quite small time, like a minute. And then that kind of act kills the tumor cells and the cancer cells there. Because it's local, it has less side effect compared to chemotherapy. But sometimes they both had to be used because one is not enough, or maybe sometimes both of them is more useful. That will be decided by the doctors and the stage of the person.
Thank you for that insight. So here we'll move on to the next one. Why do some people suffer severe sickness during chemotherapy treatment?
That's probably because of the side effects, and depends on individual general health. Sometimes the drugs could show more severe effect compared to the another person who is maybe having the same drug, same dose, but not showing the same symptoms. That could be due to their general health. While they are targeting fast-growing cancer cells or dividing cells, because we naturally have our own healthy cells also supposed to divide and grow, those drugs are not able to separate which one is cancer, which one is not cancer, my healthy body cell. So that's why they both affect those cells. Those both of those cells are affected by the chemotherapy drugs, and that's why we have those severe symptoms. If you just technically think you're having something really toxic in your body, it's normal that your body is reacting. Obviously, that's why vomiting or hair loss or feeling so upset in your gut and stomach, that's usually something. When we get a bit poisoned, we feel those things. That's the side effects of the drugs.
Yeah, thank you for that. Why do some cancer treatments cause hair loss?
That's due to the effect of chemotherapy drugs, because those drugs are targeting fast growing and dividing cells, which is the cancer cells. Our healthy cells, which do the same thing, also being affected by those drugs. So this is why hair follicles, for example, those cells are actually divide themselves naturally, repeatedly. And when we have the chemotherapy drugs, they are also being targeted. And this is why we lose the hair at that time, because those cells are so dying because of chemotherapy. But eventually, when the chemotherapy ends, the hair comes back from the remaining hair follicle cells.
Yeah, thank you for that insight there. So the next question we have here is, what determines whether a cancer diagnosis is considered terminal?
That will be the point that cancer start developing, the cells divided, and maybe they form a tumor in one location in the body. And then later they start metastasizing, which means that they are migrating from that location to another location in the body. Could be other organs, other part of the body. And they start also forming tumors there. They grow. And if the spread is too much, then the doctors might see that the amount of chemotherapy drugs, the dose that you need to give, it's too much, which reaches a point that it's technically you're killing the person with the drug. So then you can't do it. You can still give small doses, but if you anticipate that it's not even going to help because the spread is so much and the tumor grown is so much, then it's also, you can call it, we came to end of the medicine practice that we can do, then you might start calling it terminal. Or there are cases that the tumor grown so much is actually damaging the organ, because that's another problem of tumor growth. Imagine the brain in a restricted area. We have a skull. You can't just expand your brain. Compared to some other parts of the body, in the skin, you can have skin cancer growing outside of your body. The tumor size is actually not going to kill you. For example, in skin cancer, what is hurting is that the metastasis of those cancers to other organs. Otherwise, in the skin, tumor can grow outside without hurting the skin function. But if the same thing is happening in the brain, then the brain function will decline severely as well. And then it will affect the rest of the entire body. So there will be cases that the growth and the problem reached a level. The only thing you can see, some time for that patient to go, and the treatment is actually helpless at that stage. So sadly, these moments, then the medicines start calling them terminal.
How do cancer cells form into tumours?
They start dividing themselves in a region in the body. It's like, we can think it's like an embryo development. So when single cell zygote exists, fertilized egg with the sperm, and then it starts dividing itself, and those cells start staying together because they are like dividing from one single cell. It's like cancer behaves like that as well. So one single cell start dividing, and then they are staying together. And when they reach a certain level, you can start feeling them physically. They gain 3D volume, and they also form blood veins around that little existence. So it makes them solidify, and then keep growing because they are able to have the blood supply as well. And the body doesn't reject that because technically it's your own cell. They're just dividing uncontrollably, so they are able to stay there and then grow. There are fighters actually. There are fighter cells in our body to prevent this, but the division speed is faster than the fight. So then we start seeing the tumor exist.
Thank you for that. So we've got time for one more question today, and it says, what is metastatic cancer?
Metastatic cancer means that after a cancer appeared in a region in the body, in a local area, eventually in time, those cells, some of those cells, start jumping to the blood or the lymph circulation, so they can travel with those circulation across the body and they can settle in other parts of the body. It's not always clear, how, not how maybe, but like why a cancer prefers a certain region to locate themselves as a metastasis. But there are some clues that we know in research why certain type of cancers goes to certain locations. But it's just jumping to do circulation and then going somewhere else to locate themselves that we call metastasis.